Distinguished delegates, Agenda Item 2 of the 13th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats? Distinguished delegates, Agenda Item 2 of the 13th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development will commence shortly. May I please ask all to take their seats?
Okay. Excellency, distinguished delegates, I hope you had a pleasant launch and meaningfully engaged in the side event. I call this meeting to order. During this meeting, we will continue agenda item 2 and we will focus our deliberation on the theme opportunity to translate the Doha political declarations of the World Social Summit into concrete actions. The second World Summit for Social Development concluded on 6 November 2025 with the adoption of the Doha political declarations of the World Social Summit. The summit emphasized the centrality of social development and need for the holistic and interconnected solutions to advance the SDGs. The discussions under this agenda item will provide a platform to share views on opportunity to translate the call to actions of the Doha political declarations of the World Social Summit and the social dimensions of the 2030 agenda into concrete actions to achieve social development for all. Our deliberations will be structured as follows. We will receive special remarks followed by a brief presentations summarizing the key outcomes of the second World Summit for Social Development. We will then move on to a panel discussions to explore strategy to implement an integrated agenda where gains in social development mutually reinforce progress on the inclusive growth and sustainable development. Afterward, I will open the floor for country and stakeholder statement. It is my honor now to invite His Excellency Mr. Lok Bahadur Thapa, President of the 2026 sessions of the Economic and Social Council. Here.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, distinguished participants, colleagues. 30 years after Copenhagen, governments reconvened in Doha in November 2025 for the Second World Summit on Social Development, where they reaffirmed their enduring commitment to advancing social development. The Doha Political Declarations rightly places social development at the very heart of sustainable development. It underscores that social development is foundational to stability, to inclusions, and trust within and among societies. And it renews our collective resolve to eradicate poverty, secure decent work for all, and deepen social inclusion is the bedrock of peaceful, resilient, and prosperous communities. At a time when governments worldwide are confronting multiple and interconnected challenges, climate change, geopolitical tensions, demographic shifts, rising inequalities, and rapid digital transformation, testing our collective capacity to deliver on the promises of the 2030 Agenda and its SDGs. The Doha political declarations have rekindled our hope to restore momentum, to rebuild trust, and to accelerate transformative actions. Excellencies, over these 3 decades, Asia and the Pacific have made remarkable progress. Extreme poverty has fallen from around 50% of the populations in 1995 to around 3% in 2024. Child and maternal mortality have declined sharply. People are living longer and healthier lives. We have come close to achieving gender parity in primary and secondary educations. These are extraordinary gains. And yet, deep inequalities persist. Around 500 million people remain multidimensionally poor, and the region is off track in 92% of the social development targets under the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Informality still defines the world of work for more than 1.3 billion people, 2/3 of the employed population. While social protections has expanded, 2.1 billion people remain without adequate protections across the life course. At the same time, this region is undergoing profound change. The number of people aged 65 and over is projected to double to nearly 1 billion by 2050. Climate change is disrupting lives and livelihoods, deepening vulnerability and poverty. These overlapping transitions demand holistic, integrated responses, solutions that bring governments, the private sector, civil society together to forge inclusive and sustainable pathway forward. None of these challenges can be addressed by countries acting alone. Water security, energy transitions, population aging, informality, and climate impacts do not stop at borders. Our responses cannot either. Excellencies, Doha reminds us that the promise of the 2030 Agenda will not be realized through aspirations alone. It requires delivery at scale, solidarity in practice, and institutions capable of translating global consensus into tangible progress. This is why my visions for this presidency is guided by the motto, delivering better. We now need to move from words to action, ensuring stronger accountability and collective engagement, elevating social issues at the heart of the development policy. In this context, the Economic and Social Council has a unique role to play. It ensures systematic follow-up to the commitments made in the major international summits and conferences, including the Doha political declarations. It brings together governments, the UN systems, and stakeholders to translate shared commitment into actions. It creates a space for the diverse voices of the stakeholders, including youth, women, and persons with disabilities, ensuring that our discussions are anchored in live reality experiences. ECOSOC also provides coherent guidance to its subsidiary bodies and reinforces complementarities across mandates, across work programs, and across follow-up processes. ECOSOC forums and segments offer opportunities for linking global policy to concrete actions at the local, national, and regional levels, thereby strengthening government's efforts. Also, under my presidency, ECOSOC is advancing some priorities like food system transformations, financing for development, climate resilience, digital inclusion, and youth entrepreneurship. These are among the issues that underpin poverty eradications, decent work, and social inclusions. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, stronger regional cooperation enables us to share knowledge, align policies and resources, and learn from one another's experiences. By working together across Asia and the Pacific, we can transform shared risks into shared opportunities and accelerate progress toward the 2030 agenda. ECOSOC will continue to work with member states, the UN systems and partners to ensure that Doha political declarations translate into tangible progress in people's lives. Let us carry forward the spirit of Doha. Let us reaffirm our commitment to collective action so that progress is not only faster, but fairer, more resilient, and truly inclusive for all. I thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your insightful remarks. It is now my pleasure to welcome Mr. Srinivas Tata, Director, Social Development, ESCAP, to present the outcomes of the second World Social Summit. Mr. Tata, floor is yours.
Thank you, Your Excellency the Chair. Excellencies, distinguished participants, it is my pleasure to briefly share some highlights of the outcome document of the Second World Summit for Social Development and opportunities to translate these into concrete action in Asia Pacific. I will build upon the comprehensive remarks that were delivered by His Excellency the President of ECOSOC, and who has really highlighted many of the key elements there. Now, the Second World Summit for Social Development, which was held again from 4th to 6th of November in 2025, and many of you in this room were present there, adopted the Doha Political Declaration. The declaration articulates a shared vision towards a world free from poverty, hunger, and discrimination, and built on equity, dignity, and solidarity. It recognizes that the three core themes of social development, namely poverty eradication, promotion of full and productive employment and decent work for all, and social integration, are interrelated and mutually reinforcing, and that an enabling environment needs to be created so that all three objectives can be pursued simultaneously. The declaration, in a way that really builds upon the Copenhagen Declaration, identifies new and complex social risks that intensified or emerged since the first summit, which include climate change, as was referred to by the distinguished President, digital transformation, artificial intelligence, and last but not least, the demographic change that is sweeping the region. Now, let me pick up on some of the key themes, and I know I may be preaching to the chair, but it's good to remind to the choir here, but we remember that these are issues that we need to remind ourselves constantly. Poverty alleviation and social protection remain a big priority for Asia Pacific. Approximately 2.1 billion people in our region continue to live on less than US $6.85 per day, which is the moderate poverty line. This has been further revised. And many poor and near poor households are exposed to major changes while lacking the capacity to cope with shocks and risks, including those related to climate change. About 45% of the population of the region still lacks access to any form of social protection. And on average, countries in the region invest only 8.2% of their GDP on social protection, as against a global average of 12.9%. So there's still work to be done. The ESCAP will continue to provide support to member states for the implementation of the Doha Political Declaration by advancing data for inclusive and evidence-based policy design and reduce inequality of opportunity, as well as promote more inclusive and comprehensive social protection systems. Many of you are familiar with the ESCAP's Leaving No One Behind tool that quantifies inequality of opportunity with microdata from 33 countries in our region. The Social Protection Simulator calculates the impact of social protection on reducing poverty, on reducing inequality, and provides a very strong advocacy tool for those who want to promote social protection. Above all, we will continue to promote the implementation of the action plan to strengthen regional collaboration on social protection as a prime way of addressing the Doha agenda, the Doha Political Declaration. We also know about the sweeping demographic change, including population aging, and that is sweeping our region, and the need for intergenerational solidarity. It is estimated by 2050, as many as 52% of the countries in our region will be aged or super-aged. Look at in 1990, 90% of those countries were young, or less than 7%. Look at the speed of change. This is a graph that never fails to hit home. At the same time, we are also certain countries, we still have a significant young population. In some, we still are home to 700 million young people. So we really have to work on the whole aspect of strengthening intergenerational solidarity between the younger and the older generations. We are working closely with member states to build capacity regarding the development and revision of policy on older persons, and we have compiled policies and action plans across the regions in a repository, which will help us really understand from the experiences and learn from the experiences of other countries. We are supporting the review of the Madrid International Plan of Action, and our youth policy toolbox remains a widely used online repository and e-learning platform to help policymakers and youth-led organizations on how to develop inclusive and responsive youth policies, who also remain a priority despite the rapid pace of aging. I'd like to also focus on gender equality and women's empowerment, as well as issues faced by persons with disabilities. We know that in our region, women continue to undertake the majority of unpaid care responsibilities, which restricts their ability to participate in paid work, in the labor market, or invest in skills development, engage in entrepreneurship, or transition into higher productivity sectors. In the area of disability, ESCAP member states have been at the forefront of promoting the rights of persons with disabilities. Mr. Chair, ESCAP is the only region where member states have declared 4 consecutive Asia-Pacific decades of persons with disabilities. We are working very closely with member states to advance gender equality and women's economic empowerment, also by strengthening policy environments and expanding care systems. For disability, I would like to highlight that the new Disability Decade presents a unique opportunity to advance disability rights and disability inclusive development. And our working group on the Asian and Pacific Decade of Persons with Disabilities it's a unique for the decade 2023 to 2032, has 20 governments and 20 civil society. We have a unique structure where civil society and governments are together. Moving on, data and statistics. The Doha Declaration includes strong provisions for implementation, follow-up, and review. ESCAP continues to help countries generate policy-relevant disaggregated evidence needed to monitor commitments under the Doha Declaration, especially on poverty, inequality, population development, aging, migration, gender, disability, social protection, and leaving no one behind. Importantly, the declaration sets out a 5-year follow-up process starting in 2031. The declaration invites the regional commissions to convene regional preparatory meetings to assess progress and identify gaps and highlight opportunities to accelerate implementation. Within ESCAP, the Committee for Social Development already serves as a structured mechanism for this follow-up and will continue to do so. So ESCAP leads the regional follow-up on several global frameworks that align closely with the Doha Declaration, which include ICPD, the Beijing Platform for Action, CRPD, the Global Compact for Migration, and the Madrid International Plan for Action on Aging. In closing, ESCAP is uniquely placed as a central platform for supporting the implementation of the Doha Political Declaration and to provide regular follow-up to feed into the ECOSOC processes at the global level. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tata, for setting the scene through your presentations. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Tilmija Hussain, Director, United Nations Regional Commission's New York Office, as a moderator of the panel discussions. May I invite Ms. Hussain and the distinguished panelists to come to the rostrum.
Good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished participants. It is an honor to moderate this high-level panel, Opportunities to Translate the Doha Political Declaration into Concrete Actions, under the Agenda Item 2 of the APFSD. The Doha Political Declaration reminds us that today's challenges are deeply interconnected and can only be addressed through holistic solutions and strong collaboration among all stakeholders. In that spirit, this session brings together different perspectives on partnerships needed to drive progress on the 2030 Agenda and opportunities to ensure that social development remains central to all efforts towards achieving the 2030 Agenda. First, we will discuss how to build climate resilience of people through access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy. Second, we turn to unprecedented demographic shifts in the region. For the first time, multiple generations are coexisting at scale, calling for stronger intergenerational solidarity. Third, the panel will examine the pivotal role of the private sector in driving inclusive growth and how public-private partnerships can align climate targets with people-centered growth. Finally, we will look at the role of youth and civil society in advancing the social dimension of sustainable development. The panel will consist of 2 rounds of questions. I look forward to a rich discussion that connects policy, practice, and people and help us move closer to sustainable and inclusive outcomes for all. Now, before I invite the panelists, let me share a housekeeping. I've been told strictly to keep the time, so I'm going to keep a New York-style timer to remind you gently when the time is up. I now have the honor to invite, as our first speaker, Her Excellency Ms. Fanefotu Fituwafe, Minister of Internal Affairs, Tonga. Your Excellency, what strategies has your government adopted to promote climate resilience for groups in vulnerable situations through enhanced access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy? Could you please share how poverty alleviations of these groups in vulnerable situations contribute to your national objectives to SDG 7?
Chair, Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, it is an honor to contribute to this critical dialogue and share Tonga's experiences in policy innovation, implementation models, and partnerships. This panel is not here merely to share our experiences. We are here to translate the political commitments made in Doha into concrete action, advancing from vulnerability to resilience. We must recommit to action-driven implementation, moving beyond rhetoric and actively engage diverse stakeholders in partnership and collaborative solution building as exemplified through our deliberation at this summit. Tonga's energy transformation commenced in 2008 with the enactment of the Renewable Energy Act, establishing a comprehensive framework to enhance energy security, confront climate change, and expand equitable access to modern energy services. In 2009, the government adopted an ambitious target to generate 50% of national electricity from renewable sources by 2020. This commitment underpinned the Tonga Energy Roadmap 2010 to 2020, which charted a strategic transition from near total dependence on imported fossil fuels toward a more diversified, resilient, and sustainable energy system. In 2020, Tonga achieved 96% nationwide electricity access, extending coverage to even the most remote islands. Simultaneously, line losses were reduced from 18% to 9%, significantly enhancing efficiency and lowering consumer costs. Renewable energy generation approached the 15% target, while progress was made towards universal access to cleaner cooking solutions. Additionally, institutional capacity was reinforced through the establishment of the Department of Energy, fostering governance and oversight. Acknowledging the imperative for continuous advancement, Tonga has adopted a second roadmap, Term Plus 2021 to 2035, setting an ambitious target of achieving 100% renewable electricity by 2035. This strategic roadmap envisions an energy system that it is not only affordable and inclusive, but also resilient, sustainable, and secure. It prioritizes grid stability, battery storage, disaster-resilient infrastructure, and the decentralization of renewable systems, particularly for outer islands, to ensure uninterrupted service during extreme weather events. Complementing this roadmap, the Tonga Energy Efficiency Master Plan 2020 to 2030 prioritizes demand management alongside supply expansion, implementing measures in public buildings, appliance standards, and community programs to reduce cost and emissions. The Energy Act 2021, Tonga's first comprehensive energy legislation, reinforces this framework by providing regulatory oversight and supporting renewable energy and emissions reduction targets under the Paris Agreement. Our approach prioritizes inclusive resilience. Term Plus integrates gender mainstreaming in line with Tonga's women empowerment and gender equality policy, actively involving women, youth, persons with disabilities, and remote communities in consultation, capacity building, and training. By fostering skills development and social participation, we ensure equitable distribution of the benefits of the energy transition, empowering vulnerable groups as active agents of resilience. As a resource-limited island nation, Tonga's greatest asset is its people. By placing communities at the heart of our energy transformation, we advance climate resilience, strengthen livelihoods, foster innovation, and secure a sustainable future for all Tongans. The declaration provides a framework, but its true impact lies in national ownership, local leadership, and multi-stakeholder collaboration. When tailored to Tonga's context, it ensures that climate resilience, poverty eradication, and social inclusion are unified in a single sustainable path to equitable development. I thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, for sharing these very concrete examples and strategies. And also, you have set the stage by keeping to the time limit. I now have the pleasure to invite Her Excellency Ms. Lisa Bersales, Executive Director, Commission on Population and Development, Philippines. Your Excellency, we face unprecedented demographic shifts that are resulting in societies where multiple generations live and interact side by side. This calls for holistic and life course approaches to policy making that foster intergenerational solidarity. What role can engagement between young people and older people play to support the achievement of SDG targets, in particular related to water and sanitation, access to clean energy, and innovation?
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Before I answer the question, I thought really hard about the Doha Declaration in relation to the 2030 Agenda. So may make two notes before I answer the question. First, the three core themes of the Doha Declaration of Social Development, namely poverty eradication, promotion of full and productive employment and decent work for all, and social integration, are really aligned with the 2030 Agenda with its three pillars of economic development, environmental protection, and social inclusion. Data and studies have shown the interlinkages or intercorrelations among the indicators under the different pillars of the SDGs, and thus also the core themes of Doha. They are either synergies, positive correlations, or trade-offs, negative correlations. For example, strong synergies, positive connections, have been observed across SDG 1, poverty, SDG 3, health, SDG 4, education, SDG 7, affordable and clean energy, and SDG 11, cities. On the other hand, environmental trade-offs, negative correlations, have been shown between industrial growth, SDG 9, and life below water, SDG 14, and terrestrial ecosystems, SDG 15, meaning when you address one, you have a trade-off on the other. And these are really important notes to remember. But my second other reflection or note that I want to bring before us is that the 2030 Agenda explicitly required SDG indicators to be disaggregated where relevant by income, sex, age, race, ethnicity, migratory status, disability, and geographic location to identify vulnerable groups and track progress accurately. Because of the required disaggregation by age and sex, effectively, the 2030 Agenda considers whatever demographic shifts may happen, and this would include aging. It is therefore vital to use the life course approach and foster intergenerational solidarity. As to the question asked of me, the engagement between the youth and older persons combines fresh perspectives, digital fluency, and urgency of the youth. The youth are urgent. They want to make things happen now. But we have the older persons with the wisdom and the experience and the resources that they have learned through the years. And putting these energy of the youth and the calmness of the older persons really create a good perspective together. And such engagement can provide good perspectives in addressing the two SDGs asked, accelerating sustainable energy, SDG 7, and promoting sustainable industrialization and innovation, SDG 9. So examples of how the older people and the youth come together to accelerate sustainable energy. Older experts with backgrounds in engineering, policy, or finance can mentor young innovators developing renewable energy solutions such as solar, bioenergy, energy storage, so that the youth's perspective can be integrated to the experience of the older experts. On promoting sustainable industrialization and innovations, combining youth innovators' knowledge of new technologies, including artificial intelligence, with older experts' knowledge of what worked before, what did not work before, will really help hasten the building of smart, efficient, and sustainable cities. In summary, the partnership between the youth and older persons turns potential generational conflict into constructive collaboration. The youth bring with them what if, while the older persons bring how to. Together, they create a faster, more inclusive, and sustainable path to cleaner energy and smarter industry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. We're rocking on time. Thank you for sharing how intergenerational solidarity is inextricably linked to the achievement of 2030 Agenda. I wish to invite Piachat Isarabakti or Kunam, CEO Brandy and Companies and member of the Thai Chambers of Commerce. Kunam, private sector entities are pivotal in generating decent employment, ensuring more equitable supply chains, and promoting inclusive growth, including by facilitating transitions to low-carbon economies. What partnerships between the private and public sector are needed to support climate change targets while ensuring a more people-centered growth? How can these partnerships support skill development and reskilling for a just transition, especially for SMEs and local enterprises?
Thank you. Good afternoon. Excellency, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I have my privilege to be here and also have a very long question to answer. So before I going deeper into details, I would like to highlight my answer into two parts. The first one is quite from a board perspective. We have to look into detail about the role, and the relationship in the economy. In the past, we have a clear definition of the rule where stakeholders engage in the economy and the market. And then we have identified the role in each silo. We have private sector to make a profit. We have government sector. Your job is to create a relationship sector. Your job is to create a relationship with customers. You might have heard about customer-centric then. You do as much as you can to ensure that customers love you. Does play a very crucial part in successful business. But today, you have put so many challenges and chalks into the paper. You talk about geopolitical tension, you talk about low growth economy, you talk about new social structure. You mentioned many structural disruptions, which means we need to revisit the rules and the roles again. So the rule of competition today is completely different from the past because you don't know exactly which games you are playing in. So the idea of private and public partnership comes into the table where we need to discuss what is an exact rule that needed in today's context and tomorrow. So defining the rules is That is why we need to convene all stakeholders together and think about what exactly we need in terms of competition and collaboration. And then the role. It's important to identify this because the role of private sector in the past is to care about shareholder. But today, you can look at the sustainable development in two perspectives. One, you look at how you can do social goods into the society. And the second, you can think about social development or sustainable development as emerging opportunities because the market is currently saturated right now. So we keep competing on price war. So that is the new role. And with that perspective, the public sector, like government, need to reconsider their role as well, from regulating everything in the market to try facilitating the transition. So now we are transitioning from the normal economy that we know towards something that I have in my hand called sustainomy. So we are talking about why we need to choose one between the economic growth and sustainable future, where we can have both. This coming to the big things when we look in the deeper perspective. Because when you say you need to take care of SME, it means that when you ask private sector to take care of SME or small people, they say, well, I have to take care of those who can pay me. So the idea coming to the table as the public sector need to take care of citizens and the private sector need to find the money. So if they want to take care of SME and small people, it's going to be risky. So managing today is not about ability to capture the opportunity. It's about the ability to mitigate risk and unforeseen shocks that would come in more frequently. So private sector need to be de-risked. That is why the government come into the table and help private sector to make an investment without less worry. And this is not about, less risk. To have less risky, you need to work with SME and small people to kindly adapt themselves toward the new environment, reskilling, changing their mindset, and they need to understand that it always come up with the tough questions you need to answer. Easy questions already been answered already. So that is the new ecosystem, why private, public, and people partnership work together to unlock the transition from economy to the future that we want, sustainomy. Thank you.
Thank you, Kunam, for really sharing some examples and really practical solutions and suggestions to engage the private sector. Sustainomy, I look forward to reading that book. Allow me to now turn to Ms. Shilpa Lamichane, Executive Director, Visible Impact, Nepal, and representative of the Asia Pacific Regional Coordination and Engagement Mechanism to share some insights. Ms. Lamichane, could you share examples of regional or country-level initiatives that are engaging civil society, especially youth, in solutions or last-mile delivery innovations to advance the social dimension of SDG goals such as clean water, sustainable energy, or industry and innovation?
Thank you, Madam Moderator, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and colleagues. When we speak about translating the Doha Political Declaration into action, we must first reflect what the summit achieved and where it fell short. While Doha renewed the long-neglected social development mandate, we view it as a missed opportunity. We understand that there is some progress on the social development issues, but that is few and uneven. Doha fell short of creating the urgency and global consensus on the critical issues of IFA, political accountability, and basic issues like social protection. Now, getting back to your question about the initiatives across South Asia and the Asia Pacific, youth and civil societies are taking small but significant efforts at the local level. On water and sanitation, in my own work, youth-led groups and civil society have partnered with municipalities, contributing data to voluntary local reviews. For example, young people have worked with local governments to conduct community-level water, sanitation, and hygiene mapping in informal settlements, directly informing municipal sanitation budgets. These community-led, youth-led sanitation approaches pioneered in South Asia have shown that when communities lead behavior change and monitoring, they can drive measurable improvements in sanitation access and community health. Though we understand that these local efforts cannot alone close the global gaps, we can definitely say that youth networks have been critical in sustaining the process beyond Doha declarations. On clean energy, although renewable energy access has expanded in our region, justice in energy transitions remain limited. Initiatives like the Right Energy Partnership with indigenous people show how a fair and inclusive transition can be led by communities themselves, drawing on the leadership and knowledge of indigenous people, including women and youth. By supporting decentralized and community-owned renewable energy systems, these efforts ensure communities are not just beneficiaries, but decision makers. Linking clean energy to productive use, local governance, and protection of the territories, they demonstrate how energy transitions can promote self-determination, social inclusion, and sustainable livelihoods, in line with the Doha Political Declaration's commitments to equity and participation. On infrastructure and cities, we must be honest. Innovations and infrastructure is not inclusive by default, and the digital divide remains wide. Sustainable Development Goal 11 is significantly off track as the cost of housing, water, electricity, and transport continue to rise. At the same time, grassroots efforts have shown what inclusive infrastructure looks like. Grassroots have successfully bridged digital divides in some countries by empowering communities to build and govern their own networks. They have expanded affordable internet in rural areas through community-owned Wi-Fi and mesh networks. Across these experiences, one thing is clear. Grassroots and people-led solutions exist and are effective in ensuring inclusion and reaching even those that are hard to reach. That, to me, is the social dimension of Sustainable Development Goals in practice. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Lamechane, for underscoring the instrumental role CSOs and youth play, especially in just transition. Distinguished participants, we will now continue with our second round of panel discussion. I would like to again recognize Her Excellency Ms. Fane Fotu Fituafe, Minister of Internal Affairs, Tonga. Your Excellency, could you kindly share how your government partners with communities to strengthen the engagement of groups in vulnerable situations in the planning, management, and maintenance of energy systems? How can regional mechanisms support and scale up these efforts?
Chair, Your Excellencies, in the Kingdom of Tonga, poverty alleviation and the achievement of SDG 7, access to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all are inseparable. I wish to reiterate that the Tonga Energy Roadmap Plus, Term Plus, places strong emphasis on inclusion, particularly the meaningful participation of women and vulnerable populations. Energy poverty and income poverty are closely linked. Households with limited financial resources are disproportionately affected by high fuel costs, inefficient appliances, and climate-related disruptions. Addressing poverty directly accelerates our progress toward SDG 7 by ensuring that no community is left behind in the energy transition. Chair, affordable renewable energy reduces household expenditure on imported fossil fuels, freeing income for essential needs such as education, healthcare, and food security. Energy efficient appliances and reduced line losses lower system-wide costs, helping stabilize tariff for low-income families. Clean and safer cooking solutions improve health outcomes, especially for women and children. while reducing environmental degradation. This is how poverty alleviation strengthens human capital, which in turn enhances the sustainability of our energy systems. With the submission of our third nationally determined contribution, NDC, Tonga built on these commitments with both ambition and fairness at its core. Anchored in our national legal and policy frameworks, including the Climate Change Fund Act 2021, the Energy Act 2021, the Disaster Risk Management Act 2021, the Tonga Strategic Development Framework 2035, and the Long-Term Low Emission Development Strategy 2021 to 2050, our NDC reaffirms our determination to achieve 70% renewable electricity generation by 2030 and to progress toward 100% by 2035. These frameworks ensure that climate and energy financing mechanisms are structured to protect vulnerable groups. The Climate Change Fund Act, for example, provides a vehicle to mobilize and channel resources towards resilience building projects, include renewable energy systems for outer islands and climate-proof infrastructure. By prioritizing communities most at risk from climate impacts, we simultaneously address poverty, vulnerability, and strengthen energy security. Our updated NTC also expands mitigation coverage across key sectors, including energy and transport, agriculture, forestry, and other land use, waste, and the inclusion of industrial process and product use. These expansions create opportunities for green employment, skills training, and local enterprise development, particularly for youth and women, thereby linking climate ambition with economic empowerment. Furthermore, Tonga has expanded its adaptation priorities to include coastal zone protection, fisheries and marine resources, forestry, education, water security, and disaster risk management. This comprehensive approach reflects our understanding that resilient livelihoods are foundation to achieving SDG 7. For example, protecting fisheries and coastal ecosystems safeguards income sources that enable households to afford energy services. Strengthening water security and disaster preparedness ensures that renewable energy systems remain operational during extreme events, preventing vulnerable communities from falling deeper into poverty due to prolonged outages. Importantly, poverty alleviation also contributes to energy sustainably through community ownership and participation. When vulnerable groups are included in consultation processes, capacity building programs, and technical training, they become active partners in maintaining renewable installation, promoting energy efficiency, and ensure long-term system viability. Empowered communities are more resilient communities. In essence, poverty reduction in Tonga is not a parallel objective of SDG 7, it is a driving force behind it. By reducing vulnerability, enhancing livelihoods, and investing in inclusive development, we create the social economic conditions necessary to sustain our transition to affordable, reliable, sustainable, and modern energy for all. For Tonga, advancing SDG 7 is therefore not only an energy goal, it is a pathway toward dignity, resilience, and shared prosperity. Malo apito.
Thank you. Thank you, Minister, for highlighting the important role of communities to ensure more sustainable energy system and also what we can do at regional level to support these efforts. I now turn to Her Excellency Ms. Lisa Bersales. Among the 60 plus and 80 plus group, women are the majority of older persons. How does this affect the gender dimension of intergenerational relations, and what role can governments play to promote a life course approach to women's economic empowerment? And I will also add a second part. What role can regional processes play to support the intergenerational solidarity? The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Actually, I have 5 areas of consideration to answer your question. First is data collection and governance to support empirical-based analysis, and this is true at all levels of governance in Asia-Pacific region, in the countries, and subnational levels. We really need to have gender disaggregated data and age disaggregated data as well. This will implement systematic gender information to accurately monitor the health, socioeconomic status, and needs of older women. If I may share with everyone, in the Philippines, we celebrate every March National Women's Month. And our statistics office, the Philippine Statistics Authority, updates its fact sheet on women and men every March. The information include sex disaggregated information on life expectancy. Of course, our women live longer than our men by about 7 years. Labor force statistics, our women, around 55% are in the labor force. And this is due to caregiving needs of the family. Vital statistics such as cause of death, and in the Philippines, heart, ischemic and heart diseases and cancer are the leading causes of death. So these are very important information to plan for the needs of older women. The second area of consideration I propose is gender-responsive health and care policies. Policies must move beyond just increasing lifespans. So in Asia Pacific, our life expectancies have been increasing, but is our health getting better? So for older women especially, it's not just about increasing life expectancy, but also increasing healthy life expectancy. Older women often live longer with more comorbidities, osteoporosis, cardiovascular diseases, cognitive impairment. We also need to implement targeted preventive care. So if we know already from data that women tend to have cancer and a number also have heart diseases, then there should be screening programs tailored, targeted to such kinds of diseases for older women. As women are more likely to live alone because they outlive the men, and they need more long-term care. So long-term care is an issue, and policy should support aging in a place through accessible housing, community-based care, home care services, reducing the burden on unpaid family caregivers. Data show on caregiving, especially in the Philippines, that the daughters are the ones taking care of their mothers, who are the older ones. The wives are the ones taking care of their spouses or male partners. Third area of consideration is economic security and social protection. Due to career interruptions for caregiving and lower lifetime earnings, women face higher risks of poverty in old age. Policies must improve income security through non-contributory pensions, care credits for pension calculations, and minimum pension guarantees. Given a promotion of the life course approach, policies must combat gender-based discrimination earlier in life to ensure financial stability as the women age. Fourth area is active aging and social participation. Programs must address the high risk of social isolation and loneliness among older women living alone. Policy should recognize and support the vital role older women play as informal caregivers for grandchildren and other family members, while ensuring this does not lead to burnout or financial strain. And the last and fifth is intergenerational relations and solidarity. Policy should facilitate intergenerational programs that recognize the role of older women as active contributors to their communities rather than just passive recipients of care. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Thank you for sharing how integral the gender equality is to achieve intergenerational solidarity, also highlighting care economy. Women carry a bigger burden on unpaid care economy, so thank you for highlighting that. Let me turn to Ku now. As we shift towards clean and more affordable energy, what impacts can this have on people and their communities, and what role can the private sector play to ensure a just energy transition? How can regional mechanisms support private-public partners in this area?
Thank you. Before I answer the question, I think today we have heard a word action many times, right? I've been traveling to speak on many stages all over the world, and people keep saying that we need to move from the vision to action. So to make you start to act, there would be two big parts you need to deal with. First is about mechanism. So you need to know the new mechanism that make our contributions work collectively. And the second, which I want to highlight here with the panel, is the decision lens, which is the willingness to act. So if you talk to private sector, they've been great with the economic growth for over a century, but they focusing on that part solely. And then when you ask them to kindly look at the sustainable development, the decision lens of trading off between growth and development will be up on the table. So if you want to have higher growth, you might have to pay attention less on sustainable development. But if you want to highlight sustainable development, let's say you want to invest more, you have to sacrifice with your growth. These two are on the decision lens of all leaders, and they need to make a balance of this. But the thing that I highlight before is we need to ensure that our collaboration, public, private, and people partnership will help reducing the gap of this understanding. We must have the new mindset that the economic growth and sustainable future can get along well. Energy transition is a good example. So in the past, we focus more on everything on the energy security. Right? We want to ensure that we have the energy, feed our city, feed our country. But then when it comes to sustainable development, we have a look on the other side, which is energy sustainability. We want to ensure that we can fuel our society with greener and cleaner energy. And then when there is any crisis emerging, let's say the armed conflicts, you get back to the price and the security, which is energy affordability. And you know it as the energy trilemma. You look at the price and say, we need to have a lower price of energy. And more importantly, more stable energy price to ensure that your business, your small and medium enterprise, your large corporate, your factories can run the business with the effectiveness and efficiency. So these three play a very crucial part when we need to make a decision on energy transition. That is why some countries are very advancing about energy transition. Some countries still figuring out the proportional between these three elements in terms of energy. So for about the energy security, one country might not be able to secure the energy to feed the country. So that is why the regional collaboration plays a very crucial part. If you collaborate more, you can ensure that the energy security happenings in the economic blocks or in your region. And then the price. Again, the price too low is not good. The price too expensive is not good as well. So to find the balance between this play a very crucial part in driving both economic growth and sustainable development. And most importantly today, we understand that we need to secure the future because we have borrowed too much future from the future generations. We borrow the money, That is why all countries are in debt. We borrow the national resources. That is why, we have borrowed the world from them. Borrowing without asking is stealing. So that is something that we cannot neglect anymore. So these three elements, we need decision lens that we need to deal with them in the right proportion to drive the country forward. So the new mindset and the new understanding to deal with the energy trilemma will allow the leader of the country and the private sector to work together with the people. So we have public, private, and people partnership to ensure that we strive toward, we navigate to the future with economic growth while not consuming the future of the new generation.
Thank you, Kunam. And also, thank you for highlighting that sustainability and high growth doesn't have to be mutually exclusive, and the regional collaborations can actually help us get there. Now, let me turn to Ms. Shilpa Lamichane. In your view, what are the key factors that enable youth engagement in inclusive regional cooperation and follow up to accelerate the implementation of the Doha Political Declaration? And how can civil society help strengthen these factors?
Thank you for the question, Madam Moderator. Excellencies and colleagues, if we are serious about accelerating the Doha Political Declaration, youth engagement must move beyond the events and into the system. So first, our participation must be institutionalized. Youth representation in Sustainable Development Goal coordination bodies, voluntary national review processes, and regional forums should not depend on invitation. It should be embedded in the governance structures. There must also be feedback loops because consultation without response weakens the trust of young people. Second, civic space matters. Across South Asia, many civil society organizations are operating under increasing regulatory and financial pressures. Youth innovation cannot thrive in shrinking civic space. Social development requires democratic space. Third, financing priorities must align with the social commitments. Several countries in our region are facing rising debt servicing obligations. When social sectors are the first to face the cuts, progress on water, energy access, and inclusive infrastructure slows. Translating Doha Declaration into action requires fiscal choices that prioritize people, that prioritize young people. Now, coming to how civil society can help strengthen these factors, it can do by producing localized data that improves targeting. It can facilitate South-to-South learning across Asia-Pacific, and it can ensure intergenerational dialogues and intergenerational solidarity, particularly among young people and policymakers. Because intergenerational solidarity is not just a slogan. We must start practicing it. I firmly believe that young people in our region are not waiting to be empowered. They are already building the solutions. Our responsibility as partners, as policymakers, as institutions is to create enabling systems that sustain and scale those solutions. The Doha Political Declaration gives us a framework. Implementation will depend on whether we are willing to share the power. If we truly believe in leaving no one behind, then we must be willing to redesign systems that currently leave many behind. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lamichane, for sharing your insights on tangible ways we can support implementation of the Doha Declaration at regional level, and for stressing the critical role civil society and young people play to translate these aspirations into real change. I wish to thank our panelists for their insightful interventions, and in the spirit of keeping to the time allocated to this session, I will yield my time as moderator to summarize the session. Instead, allow me to give the floor to the panelists to share their closing reflections. In that spirit, I first recognize Her Excellency Ms. Fane Fotu Fituafe, Minister of Internal Affairs of Tonga, to share her closing reflections.
I just want to take this time to thank you for the opportunity to be here and to represent Tonga on this stage in a way that we come together to discuss issues to promote climate resilience and ensure that no one is left behind. Thank you so much for the opportunity and looking forward to learn more from all of you. Malo.
Thank you, Your Excellency. I now recognize Her Excellency Ms. Lisa Barsales.
As our region, the Asia-Pacific region, experienced demographic changes, demographic shifts, especially aging, I propose that we celebrate every stage of our lives, and we celebrate the youth and the older persons and those in between, the ones my office refers to as the working age population. Let us celebrate this intergenerational relationships. Let us make these demographic shifts of opportunities and not worrying situations. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency. Let me turn to Kunam.
Thank you. We heard about the system designed in 20th century might not be working in 21st century. So clearly we need a new operating system where we're not focusing only how to manage and operational excellence, but the system that take care of the entire ecosystem, ecology, in the way that they grow the economy. And I believe that everyone play a crucial part on this, especially us, because we know that when the old system went down, the new system will emerge, and the middle power will show the world what is the sustainable future will be like. Thank you.
Thank you. Allow me to finally recognize Ms. Shilpa Lamishane.
I just want to say that we no longer want tokenistic participation and tokenistic representation. We want the power to lead, and we are ready to lead. So let us ensure that the programmings, the policies are reflected with the intergenerational solidarity, and we really, really want to work with young people. We really want to work with the policymakers, the adults, the senior citizens, and we really want to utilize your experiences to finding the solutions that will make us advance Agenda 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shilpa. Indeed, meaningful engagement is important. With this, I wish to thank our distinguished panelists for an invigorating discussion that has highlighted the critical importance of shared and integrated solutions across sectors, generations, and partners, and the role of regional cooperation to support acceleration of progress towards meaningful change. I thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hussain, for the excellent moderation of the panel. I'm pleased to invite the distinguished delegates to intervene on this segment of the agenda item 2 on the theme of the opportunity to translate the Doha political declaration into concrete actions. I will open the floor to statement from delegates in the speaking order as received from the Secretariat. I kindly remind delegates to limit their statement to no longer than 3 minutes to allow all delegates with the opportunity to speak. I recognize the distinguished delegates from Azerbaijan to be followed by distinguished delegates from Timor-Leste.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues. As stated in all speeches, we are entering the final 5 years of implementation. The international community stands as a vital and defining juncture. The progress achieved over the past decade has demonstrated the tangible power of collective action, yet prevailing global trends underscores the urgent need for accelerated efforts, deeper coordination, and renewed political resolve to secure sustainable and inclusive future for all. For my country, for Azerbaijan, sustainable development has long been embedded in national policy planning. Our development trajectory has been guided by clearly defined strategic priorities, strong institutional coordination, and a firm commitment to inclusive growth. Building on the achievement of previous national development priorities, Azerbaijan now advancing toward new long-term vision under the Strategy 2030, aiming at ensuring resilient economic transformation, social well-being, and environmental sustainability. Building on the solid foundation, United Nations Azerbaijan Cooperation Framework for 2026-2030, signed in October 2025 between the Government of the Republic of Azerbaijan and United Nations, represent an important milestone in deepening our strategic partnership. Currently, Azerbaijan is implementing its National Development Strategy for 2022-2026, which continues to guide our national priorities and development programs. The strategy aims for average annual GDP growth roughly 4% over the period. Growth in non-oil and gas sector is targeted to rise about 5% annually. At the same time, preparation is underway for the new socio-economic development strategy for the period of 2027-2030, which will guide the next phase of sustainable development in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, equally important is our commitment to strong social protection system, quality public services, and inclusive employment opportunities. Azerbaijan continues to expand targeted social assistance, modernize healthcare, education system, and promote decent work, particularly for youth and women. Our message to international community is both clear and resolute. A sustainable and equitable future for all remain achievable, but only through unity of purpose, inclusive partnership, and decisive coordinated action. In this spirit, the hosting both of 82nd session of United Nations Economic and Social Commission for Asia and Pacific in April 2026, annual meetings of Islamic Development Bank Group in June 2026 in Baku will provide important platform to deepen regional dialogue, mobilize sustainable finance, and accelerate collective progress toward sustainable development goals.
Please
As we meet
conclude.
today, the world stands at a critical midpoint toward 2030. Globally, only 70% of sustainable development goals target are on track, while progress on many others is slowing on reverse. Let us move forward together with determination of solidarity, responsibility, and ensure that promise of 2030 agenda become a live reality for everyone and everywhere. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Azerbaijan. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from Timor-Leste, followed by the APR CEM.
Thank you, Chair. Timor-Leste reaffirms its full commitment to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development Goals, grounded in its National Strategic Development Plan 2011 to 2030, that place people at the center of its development agenda through inclusive and sustainable development path that leaves no one behind and building resilience. As a small island developing state and a least developed country with a population of around 1.4 million, Timor-Leste is facing the structural development challenges. That includes dependence on imported fossil fuels and limited renewable energy generation capacity. Despite these vulnerabilities, we remain resolute in accelerating a just energy transition that delivers universal electricity access and ensure at least 50% of national energy generation from renewables by 2030. Today, approximately 98% of households have access to electricity, with full electrification targeted by end 2026. Timor-Leste has mobilized transformational actions, most notable the 76 megawatt solar power project with a 36 megawatt each battery energy storage system developed under an independent power producer arrangement, alongside over 4 megawatt of solar capacity from a small scale, rooftop and grounded mounting installation nationwide. This initiative illustrates our commitment to innovative and scalable solutions that broaden energy access, reduce emissions, and enhance energy security for all Timorese. To further advance transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated action, the government, through our state-owned electricity company, is piloting the modernization of the medium voltage distribution network by undergrounding lines. These initiatives aims to improve reliability and resilience of the electricity system, reduce electricity hazards and visual impacts in communities, and lower long-term maintenance costs and improve network performance. These efforts are being pursued in alignment with our national development priorities and international commitments, ensuring that energy reform supports inclusive growth, job creation, and sustainable livelihoods for our people. Excellencies, Timor-Leste affirms its development agenda is aligned with global commitments such as the Paris Agreement to balancing development with adaptation and resilience, while simultaneously pursuing sustainable economic development. As the newest and 11th member of ASEAN, Timor-Leste is actively harmonizing its national energy strategy with the ASEAN Plan of Action for Energy Cooperation 2026-2030. This alignment aims to accelerate regional collaboration for clean renewable energy while ensuring universal, affordable, reliable, and modern energy services for our people. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Timor-Leste. Now I invite for collective statement of APRCEM to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Australia.
Thank you, Chair. We represent the migrants constituency of the APRCEM. Our region is one of the biggest sources and destination of temporary migrant workers. According to the ILO, migrants contributes almost 10% of global GDP, and more than 1/3 of the global migrant labor force comes from our region. Their contribution to development are massive and undeniable. While temporary labor migration is seen as a positive pathway to address unemployment and poverty, the living and working conditions of migrant workers remain dire in reality. They experience labor-intensive, low-paid 3D jobs, dirty, dangerous, and difficult, across construction, domestic work, fisheries, agriculture, manufacturing, and hospitality. Social exclusion is pronounced with migrants' access to social protection and justice continually shrinking while their right to free speech, association, and assembly is being denied. At the same time, racism, xenophobia, hate crime, and criminalization of migrants have intensified. We raise concern particularly about the limited space to discuss these challenges, including social protection and economic marginalization of the migrants.
Achieving social protection not only for migrants but for all will require 1. Recognizing the colonial origin of underdevelopment, 2. Addressing the roots of inequality in both migrant sending and migrant destination countries, 3. Introducing reforms grounded in Southern narratives to dismantle colonial relations across multilateral entities, governance mechanisms, and development frameworks. And 4. Enacting accountability of all actors and entities exacerbating underdevelopment. On the other hand, we are also concerned with the recommendation in the Compromiso de Sevilla on diaspora investment and how this can further affect the capacity of migrant workers. We also pose the question on whether this means strengthening labor export programs without addressing the root causes of forced migration and without resolving the living and working vulnerabilities of migrant workers. Finally, we reiterate the role of migrants as right holders in this process. A sustainable future for us will not happen with the same business as usual approach. The Doha Political Declaration should engage and prioritize us, the peoples. We demand system change. We demand development justice. Thank you.
Thank you, APR CAM. Now I invite the distinguished delegate from Australia to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Nepal.
Thank you, Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates. Australia remains deeply committed to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the ambitious vision it represents for our world. Last November, Australia joined UN member states in endorsing the Doha Political Declaration at the Second World Summit for Social Development. This landmark agreement reinforces our global understanding that social development is integral to realising sustainable development. Our challenge now is to translate these commitments into meaningful outcomes, all while navigating a contested global environment and working across multilateral institutions under pressure like never before. For Australia, we are doing this by integrating social development objectives across our foreign and development policies. Firstly, Australia's international gender equality strategy ensures that gender equality is integrated across our foreign policy, including diplomacy, trade, development, and humanitarian assistance. We do this because we know that gender equality reduces poverty and conflict and strengthens social cohesion and well-being. It unlocks economic productivity and drives development, investment, and opportunity for current and future generations. Australia is integrating gender equality into all areas of our foreign policy, and over 80% of Australia's development investments now effectively address gender equality. If we collectively allow progress on gender equality to be rolled back and undermined, we pay the price of a world that is more dangerous, more divided, less stable, and poorer. Secondly, Australia is working with regional partners to build robust social protection systems because we know these systems are key to moving the dial on poverty. Social protection reduces extreme poverty, builds resilience, promotes economic participation, and it advances gender equality, disability equity, and social inclusion. This is why social protection is a key element of Australia's international development policy. Australia is working with Pacific partners to design and build stronger, more inclusive social protection systems that support people to endure life's challenges and shocks, whether that's illness, job loss, or natural disasters. And these systems will only become more important as the effects of climate change exacerbate countries' vulnerabilities, particularly acute in small island developing states, such as those in the Pacific. Third, we are integrating disability across our international activities through Australia's International Disability Equity and Rights Strategy. We are deepening our engagement with organisations led by and for people with disability, powerful advocates for change, and key partners for creating real outcomes. Last year, Australia launched Stronger Movements, Stronger Futures, a new flagship investment to support the capacity of organisations of people with disability in the Indo-Pacific, which will help ensure people with disability are at the centre of policy and decision-making. And at the World Summit for Social Development, Australia also announced our largest international investment in assistive technology, supporting at-scales work in the Indo-Pacific to provide 500,000 children in 8 countries with access to vision, hearing and mobility assistive devices. At a time of global instability and uncertainty,
Please conclude.
Australia is a steadfast and reliable partner. While other donors are reducing development budgets, we are sustainably increasing ours. Australia will continue to work with our partners to implement the vision agreed in the Doha Political Declaration. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Australia. Now I invite the distinguished delegate from Nepal to be followed by the Asia Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body, APLG.
Mr. Chair, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, Nepal remains firmly committed to the implementation of the 2030 Agenda. Despite multiple global and domestic challenges, Nepal has made notable progress in advancing the Sustainable Development Goals. Poverty has significantly declined over the past decades. Access to education and health services has expanded, and access to electricity has reached over 95% of households. Nepal's constitution guarantees fundamental rights, including the right to education, health, food, housing, employment, and social justice, ensuring that sustainable development remains people-centered and inclusive. Nepal has mainstreamed SDGs into national, provincial, and local planning, budgeting, and governance systems. Nepal's 16th plan, 2024-25 to 28-29, prioritizes transformative, resilient, and inclusive development. It emphasizes sustainable urbanization, climate resilience, green infrastructure, and reducing regional disparities that are essential not only for economic transformation, but also for ensuring dignity and opportunity for all. Nepal is on the historic pathway towards graduation from the LDC category. While this reflects our development progress and national resilience, we are doubtful on new and complex challenges. Losing of preferential market access, concessional financing, and special international support measures will be posing further challenges to our national economy. Therefore, continued international partnership remains essential to ensure a smooth, sustainable, and irreversible graduation. As a mountainous, climate vulnerable country, Nepal faces disproportionate impacts of climate change despite negligible emissions. We urgently require scaled-up international support, including climate finance, technology transfer, capacity building, and increased foreign direct investment. Nepal firmly believes that transformative and coordinated action must focus on strengthening international solidarity, investing in youth and innovation, and ensuring inclusive governance. Nepal is also prioritizing the strengthening of localization of SDGs through stronger coordination among all levels of government. Nepal calls upon all development partners to extend their full support to help bridge Nepal's financial gaps and enable the timely achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals. With strengthened partnerships, political stability, empowered youth, and continued international support, Nepal is confident that we can achieve a sustainable, resilient, and prosperous future, leaving no one behind. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Nepal. Now I invite the distinguished delegates representing APLG, UCLG, ASPAC to be followed by the distinguished delegates from Malaysia.
Thank you for the opportunity to take the floor. I am Mayor Annalisa Gonzalez Kwan from Giwan Eastern Samar, representing the League of Municipalities of the Philippines, and I speak on behalf of the organized constituency of local authorities represented by the Asia Pacific Local Government Coordinating Body and coordinated by the United Cities and Local Governments Asia Pacific. As this year's third local and regional government assembly in the APFSD, we acknowledged that transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions are being undertaken by local and regional governments to attain the SDGs. The review of SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17 comes at a crucial time when the region is facing the severe impacts of climate change. Local and regional governments are on the front lines of climate impacts but still lack direct and adequate access to climate finance. We reiterate the need for simplified, direct, and concessional climate financing for local and regional governments, including the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage, Adaptation Fund, and other relevant funds and mechanisms, including those in multilateral development banks. We emphasize that localization is a critical enabler of the achievement of the SDGs, which should be supported and strengthened. There are extensive efforts to align local development plans with national development plans as reflected in voluntary local reviews, VLRs, and voluntary subnational reviews, VSRs, developed in the Asia-Pacific region. Mainstreaming and institutionalizing these reviews into national and local processes can foster multi-level and multi-stakeholder collaboration. Localization and access to financing are important pillars for local and regional governments to accelerate SDGs achievement. Without these pillars, the impact of our efforts will remain limited and short-lived. As we chart the course towards the future, not only for the Asia-Pacific region, but for the world, let us always remember that we are one humanity, living on one earth. Let us remain steadfast to our shared goals for people, planet, and prosperity. Thank you.
Thank you, APLG, UCLG, and ESCAP. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from Malaysia to be followed by the distinguished delegates from United Kingdom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Excellencies and distinguished delegates. Malaysia recognizes the timely focus of this forum on transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated actions to accelerate the implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Our national commitment is anchored in the Madani Economy Framework, a comprehensive plan to drive Malaysia toward high-value growth and sustainability. Through its three core priorities, raising the ceiling, raising the floor, and good governance, we ensure national prosperity translates directly into a better quality of life. Additionally, the aspirations of the framework are strengthened with the introduction of the 13th Malaysia Plan, the National Development Master Plan for the period of 2026 to 2030, focusing on economic, social, environmental, and good governance. Malaysia's commitment to leaving no one behind is embedded in the 13th Malaysia Plan through multidimensional efforts to uplift the living status of the people, address cost of living pressures, and strengthen social protection for vulnerable groups and communities, including women, youth, indigenous peoples, persons with disabilities, and communities in Sabah and Sarawak. Transformative structural reforms are key to building a high-income, resilient, and sustainable economy. The 13th Malaysia Plan accelerates the transformation towards a value creation-based economy by advancing high-growth, high-value industries, strengthening research, innovation, and productivity, and empowering local enterprises in meeting the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Equity stands as the cornerstone of our national mission. Malaysia is pioneering a digital economy, particularly in artificial intelligence, to act as a catalyst for economic growth, healthcare, education, and food system to ensure world-class service delivery. By empowering our micro, small, and medium enterprises to compete on a global scale, we are ensuring that technology serves as the ultimate equalizer in narrowing the national wealth gap. With technology being one of the important areas in the 30 Malaysia Plan, innovative solutions are also integrated in environmental sustainability across development priorities, including energy transition, green and circular economy, biodiversity conservation, climate adaptation and flood mitigation, reinforcing Malaysia's commitment to planetary health and long-term sustainability beyond 2030. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, Malaysia underscores that coordinated action is essential to achieving the SDG. The execution of economic, environmental, and social strategies outlined in the 13th Malaysia Plan is strengthened through the governance structure and whole-of-nation approach, which encompasses actions from multi-stakeholders across levels of government, private sector, civil society, academia, and communities. In conclusion, Malaysia's strong commitment to sustainable development is underlined in the National Framework and Plan, which embeds both transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated solutions to continue strengthening collective capacity for SDG implementation across the Asia-Pacific. With that, I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Malaysia. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from United Kingdom, followed by the APRCM Indigenous Peoples Constituency.
Thank you, Chair, Excellencies, distinguished speakers. We are really grateful for the opportunity to attend today and speak. It is vital as partners to the region that we listen and understand the priorities, direction, aspirations of all the countries gathered here. And I am pleased to say I'm going back to London with a notebook full of ideas that we can learn from and implement ourselves. We are all balancing two key objectives: growing our economies and providing opportunity for all of our citizens, whilst also tackling the urgent climate and nature crisis. And that shared vision and set of aims, we feel, is a powerful basis for modern, genuine partnerships. And that is what I would like to focus on today: how partnerships to support sustainable development are changing and how we are changing our approach with it. From a donor to an investor, partnering with countries to unlock growth, jobs and trade through innovative finance and private sector investment, focusing on systems, helping partners to build their own education, health and economic systems for the future, and offering our expertise where we have it, leveraging UK universities, our financial sector, the Metropolitan Office, education, health and tech sectors to support partners' own goals. And finally, focusing on local leadership. Last year, we heard loud and clear a message from partners at the 4th Financing for Development Conference. Countries must be able to set their own development pathways with a growing and fragmented ecosystem of development actors, from IFIs, the UN, multilateral climate funds, the private sector, philanthropies and bilateral donors, coming in behind them in a much more coordinated way to really support what they want to do. But we also recognise that SDG progress is often hampered by issues that begin beyond all of our borders. With the current challenges the multilateral system is facing, we think it's important that we also take this opportunity to reform, driving progress that can deliver impact at scale. We really want to work together to protect and improve those parts of the system most precious to our collective interests: global health, climate, humanitarian, the global financial system, and of course, as we are at ESCAP, the UN development system. Building a system that is streamlined, smartly financed, and more representative. A reformed architecture can be our first line of defence against pandemics, economic shocks, the impacts of climate change and more. And success will require us to join up across all the many moments and opportunities we have this year, building political momentum behind a truly shared agenda. SDG 17 has always been one of my favourites, don't tell the others. And we look forward to working in partnership with all of those in this room and beyond to accelerate progress all the way through to 2030. So thank you very much for allowing us to speak today.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from United Kingdom. Now I invite the APRCM Indigenous Peoples Constituency, to be followed by the distinguished delegate from India.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon. Namaste, Jojalapa. My name is Praveen. I'm an indigenous Nyawa from Nepal and convener of the Asia Indigenous Peoples Network on Extractive Industries and Energy. This statement is delivered on behalf of the indigenous peoples constituency of the APRSM. The Doha Political Declaration did not capture the full breadth of indigenous peoples' issues for economic and social development, particularly for our development to be centered on recognition and respect of our rights, including to our lands, territories, and resources, to free, prior, and informed consent, and to self-determination. We nonetheless welcome the declaration to the extent that the states have committed to creating inclusive societies and recognizing and supporting indigenous peoples in their pursuit of economic and social development. However, the realities on the ground remain starkly different from those commitments. Most states in Asia and the Pacific region do not recognize indigenous peoples, let alone our rights, including to participate in decision-making through our own institutions. Even those states that recognize indigenous peoples and provide us limited protections do not fully protect our rights as enshrined in the UN Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous Peoples and the ILO Convention 169. Despite such systemic barrier, we indigenous peoples are taking our own initiatives for our socio-economic development in our lands, territories, and resources in line with our right to self-determination. So we call on the states, UN, and development actors to partner with us, indigenous peoples, in these initiatives. For that, states, UN, and development actors or financiers must, number one, ensure recognition and respect of indigenous peoples' rights in laws, policies, and practice for us to be able to advance our self-determined development without displacement and land grabbing, among other impacts. Secondly, states, UN, and development actors must support indigenous peoples-led initiatives through adequate, direct, flexible, and sustained financing through our own institutions, through indigenous peoples' own institutions or grant-making bodies that we have set up and operationalized. And thirdly, provide other initiatives for indigenous peoples to scale up those initiatives, including access to or transfer of technologies, data generation on our own, disaggregated by ethnicity, for example, through Indigenous Navigator, and favorable policy and strong institutional support, among others. Further, we call on the UN agencies and entities in this region to initiate and operationalize an interagency support group on indigenous peoples for consolidating their works, the works of various agencies and entities with indigenous peoples without further delay. This is in follow-up to the World Conference on Indigenous Peoples and the System-Wide Action Plan on Indigenous Peoples. Let me end with a reminder that indigenous peoples are not mere stakeholders or beneficiaries for development. We are the owners and guardians of our lands and resources, and thus rights holders to decide what form of development is undertaken in our territories. I thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from India to be followed by a distinguished delegate from Armenia.
Thank you, Chair. India's development journey approaches the 2030 agenda with conviction, clarity, and commitment. The Sustainable Development Goals are deeply embedded in our development strategy at national and subnational levels and serve as a guiding framework for policy prioritization, scheme design, and outcome monitoring. With a focus on SDG localization, the progress is sustained and aligned with our long-term national vision of Viksit Bharat, Developed India by 2047. Over the past decade, India has pursued development that is transformative in scale, equitable in reach, and coordinated across institutions. India's transformative approach has been anchored in saturation of essential services, resulting in improvements in access to food, housing, electricity, clean cooking fuel, education, and healthcare. Between 2013-14 and 2022-23, more than 248 million Indians have escaped multidimensional poverty, signaling India's sustained progress towards elimination of poverty under SDG 1. Equity has been advanced through targeted inclusion and women-led development. Over 100 million women are mobilized into self-help groups under the National Rural Livelihood Mission, forming India's world's largest grassroots women's economic network. Digital public infrastructure has been a defining enabler of India's growth trajectory. Aadhaar has enabled 1.4 billion secure digital identities, while the Unified Payment Interface processes 129 billion transactions and account for 49% of the global real-time payment volumes, making it world's largest payment ecosystem. This interoperable architecture powers direct benefit transfer, optimizing benefit delivery, expanding financial inclusion, and strengthening transparency in public services. India is working with partner countries across the global south to share these digital public goods through cooperation and capacity building. Innovation and technology are central to our development strategy. At the India AI Impact Summit 2026 convened in New Delhi, India advanced a development-oriented vision of artificial intelligence anchored in people, planet, and progress. Supported by India AI Mission, India is positioning AI as a trusted public instrument to enhance service delivery, building human capability, and drive sustainable economic transformation. At the sub-national level, the Aspirational District Program, covering 112 districts, and Aspiration Block Program, spanning 500 blocks, translate national priorities into measurable local outcomes. Real-time dashboards, delta ranking, and performance-linked incentive drive continuous improvement, strengthening accountability and cooperative federalism. For India, 2030 is not a destination but a milestone in a longer development journey. Our growth trajectory extends beyond 2030 towards becoming a fully developed nation by 2047. India's development is guided by the spirit of Sabka Saath, Sabka Vikas, Sabka Vishwas, and Sabka Priyas. That is, together with all, development for all, trust of all, and effort by all. We believe that the pathway to a sustainable future lies in collective effort, shared responsibility, and inclusive growth. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from India. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from Armenia to be followed by the distinguished delegate from Laos, PDR.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. At the outset, I would like to thank the UN ESCAP Secretariat for preparing the summaries of the Asia and the Pacific SDGs Progress Report 2026, which provides an important food for thought for our deliberations. The updated information on the progress in implementation of the 2030 Agenda in our region reflects an alarming situation with a serious setback on most of the SDGs and their targets. With less than 5 years remaining until 2030, we risk uneven and unsustainable progress, environmental degradation, growing inequalities between and within societies, debt burden and conflicts and crises. The summary rightly points to the problem of lack of reliable data to assess where we stand in implementation of the SDGs and identify the gaps where accelerated action is needed. To the above challenges, we need to add the declining ODA, which further affects the ability of developing countries, in particular countries in special situations, to advance sustainable development programs. In this regard, I would like to share Armenia's national perspective on the transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated action for accelerated implementation of the 2030 Agenda. The Pact for the Future, the 2030 Agenda, Doha Political Declaration, Compromiso de Sevilla, shape the blueprint of the collective action to build a sustainable future for all. The government of Armenia is consistent in its efforts to incorporate the goals and targets of these global documents in its policies and strategies and translate their provisions into concrete, measurable, and people-centered action. Recent consolidation of government sectoral strategies into 6 strategic pillars will enable coherence and integrity in their implementation. Adopted in November 2025, the United Nations Sustainable Development Cooperation Framework for Armenia for 2026-2030 identify 4 strategic priorities: human capital and well-being, inclusive economic development, green transition for resilience, and governance for a sustainable future, which are aligned with both SDGs and Armenia's national strategies. Leaving no one behind, human rights, gender equality, and the empowerment of women, accountability, data systems, and evidence-based policy making are among cross-cutting priorities of Armenia's policies and programs to implement the 2030 Agenda. The government reform agenda prioritizes eradicating poverty and reducing inequality through strengthened social protection, universal health care coverage, quality, inclusive and affordable education, promoting decent work and inclusive growth, human capital development with focus on empowering women and youth, advancing digital transformation to improve public service delivery and environmental protection. With majority of the population living in urban areas, the government efforts are focused on enhancing environmental sustainability in the cities, improving air quality, and increasing green areas. Peace and security are important accelerators for implementing the 2030 agenda. As you are aware, in August last year in Washington, the leaders of Armenia and Azerbaijan, in witness of the US President, signed a joint declaration, and the foreign ministers of two countries initiated the peace agreement that's establishing the long-awaited peace in the region. We are confident that the implementation of TRIP connectivity project, an integral part component of Armenia's Crossroad Peace Initiative, will unlock the development potential of the Caucasus through enhancing equitable and inclusive regional connectivity, trade, and boosting people-to-people contacts. Armenia stands ready to further cooperate with UN system and its development partners to secure a sustainable future for the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Armenia. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from Lao PDR to be followed by the APR CAM, Persons with Disability Constituency.
Thank you, Chair. Excellency, distinguished delegates, the Lao PDR remains firmly committed to the realization of the Sustainable Development Goals, recognizing that transformative, equitable, innovative, coordinated actions are essential to ensure a sustainable future for all. The Lao PDR welcomed the outcome of the Second World Summit for Social Development held in Doha last year. We highly appreciate the adoption of Doha Political Declaration, which reaffirmed our collective commitment to the three core pillars of social development, namely poverty eradication, full and productive employment, and decent work for all, and social integration. These three pillars are particularly meaningful for developing countries and least developed countries, where persistent inequalities and social vulnerabilities continue to pose significant challenges to sustainable and inclusive growth. As a landlocked and least developed country, the Lao PDR places strong emphasis on people-centered development as the foundation for resilient, sustainable growth. With graduation looming ahead, the Lao PDR is committed to the implementation of Doha Political Declaration in line with the priorities of our 10th five-year National Socio-Economic Development Plan, with strong focus on social inclusion, transforming itself to an independent and self-reliant economy, ensuring that LDC graduation is smooth, sustainable, and irreversible. Mr. Chair, the Lao PDR believes that effective implementation of the Doha Political Declaration requires strengthened multilateral partnership, adequate predictable financing, as well as capacity building, technology transfer, tailored to national circumstances. Therefore, the Lao PDR calls for enhanced regional and international cooperation through the UN ESCAP in order to safeguard development gains, build resilience to external shocks across the Asia-Pacific region. In conclusion, the Lao PDR remains steadfast in its commitment to 2030 agenda and to working closely with UNESCAP, development partners, and all stakeholders to implement the outcome of the World Social Summit and the Doha Political Declaration. We determine to transform global commitments into concrete national action to advance inclusive, equitable development and effective implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. I thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from Lao PDR. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from APR CAM, Persons with Disability Constituency, to be followed by the distinguished delegates representing International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies.
Thank you, Chair. Asia and Pacific region is home to 690 million or 1 in 6 persons with disabilities. Despite their significant number, progress for persons with disabilities has been insufficient for 30% of the SDG targets and has stalled or gone in reverse for 14% of them. After 30 years, 2025 saw the second World Social Development Summit in Doha. It provided a strategic platform to reinforce SDG's commitment to leave no one behind. Through the Doha Political Declaration, member states have committed to implement inclusive, accessible, rights-based policies and services in line with the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Now it is time to deliver these commitments and ensure development justice. We therefore call on state members to ensure meaningful consultation in decision-making with full and effective participation of all persons with disabilities and their representative organizations, collect and analyze disability disaggregated data to ensure accurate SDGs progress reporting, advance SDGs 6, 9, and 11 by strengthening legislative and policy frameworks to mandate disability inclusion in construction and safety standards, ICT and cyber laws, wash and access to water, climate resilience and DRR policies, and embed universal design standards across all these domains.
Continue to promote the inclusion of all diverse women, youth, indigenous, Dalit, gender minorities, and elderly persons with disabilities in leadership and decision-making roles. Advance gender equality through comprehensive SRHR and strengthen legal framework to protect women with disabilities from violence and promote their inclusion in leadership and decision-making roles. Advance SDG 17 by encouraging stakeholders to incorporate disability in their aid and effective development assistance commitments, including for climate action, and involve organizations of persons with disabilities in international cooperative activities. Progress SDG 7 by implementing inclusive, right-based energy transit policies that center justice, equity, and human rights. Ensure persons with disability have meaningful access to decision making in every planning and project through bottom-up participatory approach. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Society to be followed by the APR CEM, Workers and Trade Union constituency.
Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies and our 38 national societies across Asia and the Pacific, we welcome the 13th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development and its focus on a sustainable future for all. We meet at a time where poverty, inequality, and climate risk are rising and threatening development. Today's agenda calls for transformative, equitable, innovative, and coordinated action so that no one is left behind. This aligns fully with our mission as a humanitarian network. As we mark the 60th anniversary of the Red Cross and Red Crescent's 7 fundamental principles, humanity, impartiality, neutrality, independence, voluntary service, unity, and universality, they remain our compass, our conscience, and our identity in every action we take. Across the Asia-Pacific region, Red Cross and Red Crescent volunteers work in every community to support social protection, provide health services, run community-based disaster risk reduction projects, and deliver livelihood and skill support to the most at risk. National societies are trusted auxiliaries to public authorities and operate before, during, and after crises. Our work is closely connected to local realities, promoting universal health access and protecting people from climate-related shocks. We urge all governments present today to invest in strong social protection system that reach the most vulnerable, including migrants, women, older people, and persons living with disabilities, to strengthen community-level climate and disaster resilience by funding anticipatory action, local preparedness, and nature-based solution, and to promote genuine multi-stakeholder cooperation, including through global initiatives such as the Early Warnings for All initiative. In closing, the IFRC reaffirms its commitment to work alongside governments and communities to improve people's lives, protect dignity, reduce risk, and build a safer and fairer future for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from APR's EM, Workers and Trade Union constituency, to be followed by the United Nations Population Fund.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are the Workers and Trade Union constituency of APR-SEM. In Asia Pacific, manufacturing value added has grown, yet manufacturing employment and living wages have stagnated over the past decade. Digital connectivity has expanded, but labor protection in platform work remain weak. At the same time, SDGs 9 and 11 are particularly off track on housing services, participatory planning, and implementing universal designs for persons with disabilities. Environmental indicators partially track emission intensity, yet understate the social cost of extractive industries, data centers, and AI expansion, particularly where monopoly limits public oversight, public ownership, and community consent. Urban futures must move from inequality to opportunity by expanding decent work, public services, and collective power. Three shifts are essential. First, address the concerns of platform workers and gig workers as we increasingly rely on digital platform. Workers are often misclassified as independent contractors without freedom of association, collective bargaining, social protection rights, and safety at work. They deal with extreme heat, heavy rains, urban flooding, poor air quality, and other hazards that endanger their health, threaten income insecurity, and disrupt livelihoods. Their ability to earn is tied to algorithms that never are transparent and fair and beyond their control. Home-based workers, many of whom are women, should also be recognized. Their rights must be guaranteed and protected. Transformative action requires stronger protection of labor rights and transitioning workers from informal to formal employment.
Second, treat care as a public good and increase investments in public services and public health. Women's employment stands at 44% compared to 71% for men. However, women perform the majority of unpaid care work. The burden of disaster, lack of public and mass transit systems, inadequate housing, water and energy access, and sanitation fall disproportionately on low-income households, particularly on women and girls. Urban plans and layouts must be inclusive and include the voices from the marginalized communities, remove unpaid care burdens, and expand the employment and leadership roles. Third, prioritize sanitation as a public service and a pillar of urban resilience. Eliminate fiscal constraints and austerity, which decrease public spending on inclusive infrastructure. Without adequate sanitation, clean water systems, and waste management, public health deteriorates and climate injustice worsens. Transformative and coordinated actions for 2030 requires embedding this transition in urban planning and shaping urban futures, adapting the new ILO standards on decent work in the platform economy, and implementing ILO recommendations 204 to transition workers from informal to formal economy. Prioritizing roads, water systems, energy access, and digital connectivity that directly serve marginalized communities, investing in public infrastructure and making care a public service. And finally, ensuring workers and communities have decisive roles to advance people-led industrial policies. Power to the working people. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite distinguished delegates from United Nations Population Fund to be followed by the United Nations volunteers.
Thank you, Chair. We meet at a moment of profound global uncertainty. The world is undergoing significant political change. Multilateralism is under strain, and official development assistance is declining. And we are witnessing a troubling retreat from commitments to human rights, gender equality, and support for those furthest behind. Too often, women and girls, young people, and those living in fragile and humanitarian contexts are the first to be deprioritized, precisely when they need solidarity and protection the most. It is in this context that UNFPA was particularly encouraged by the Doha Political Declaration. The declaration does not shy away from first principles. It reaffirms human rights, gender equality, inclusion, and dignity as the foundation of social development. It recognizes demographic change, inequality, and access to health as central, not peripheral development challenges. And it explicitly recommits to leaving no one behind. These commitments speak directly to UNFPA's mandate. So the Doha Political Declaration gives us clarity on the what, but it is not the time to stop there. What is required now is collective action to translate these political commitments into tangible change, into policies, funding and financing, and services that reach people where they are, especially those whose rights are most at risk of being rolled back. For UNFPA, this means protecting and expanding access to sexual and reproductive health and rights as a cornerstone of universal health coverage across development, humanitarian, and crisis settings so that every woman can give birth safely and every person can access the care they need. It means advancing gender equality not as an aspiration, but as a prerequisite for sustainable development, by ending gender-based violence and harmful practices, and by ensuring women and girls have full agency over their bodies, their choices, and their futures, including through access to voluntary family planning. And it means harnessing the power of population data, demographic evidence to shape inclusive, forward-looking social policies that respond to population aging, youth transitions, migration, and urbanization in ways that uphold rights and expand opportunity for all. None of this can be delivered by any one actor alone. It requires renewed partnerships, shared accountability, and collective resolve. UNFPA stands ready to work in partnership with governments, sister UN agencies, international financial institutions, civil society, and the private sector to translate the Doha commitments into action at the country level, so that women and girls are not attacked but protected, so that they are not abandoned but cared for, so they are not ignored but invested in, so that women and girls can not only survive but thrive and can contribute fully to the resilience, prosperity, and peace of the Asia-Pacific region. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from UNFPA. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from United Nations volunteers to be followed by IOM.
Mr. Chairman, Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it's an honor to address this meeting on behalf of United Nations volunteers. This forum reviews progress on the 2030 Agenda and seeks ways to accelerate transformative, equitable, and coordinated action across the region. Experience shows that progress depends not only on better data, robust policies, more financing, and stringent systems, but ultimately, progress depends on people. Volunteers in this regard play a pivotal role to turn development inspirations into daily realities. Volunteers are often the first responders in emergencies. They expand public service delivery. They strengthen community resilience. Volunteers build bridges between policies and grassroots action. Evidence from the recently published 2026 State of the World Volunteerism Report confirms that volunteerism, while not being a substitute for public service delivery, can function as a force multiplier. When supported by enabling policies and coordination mechanisms, volunteering strengthens trust, social cohesion, and the effectiveness of development action. Measuring volunteer contribution is therefore essential. Without data, much of its value remains invisible in national planning and SDG reporting. As we review the process on coordinated actions for sustainable development, member states increasingly recognize volunteerism as a cross-cutting means of SDG implementation, contributing directly to inclusive, resilient, and people-centered development. In this context, the United Nations General Assembly Proclamation of 2026 as the International Year of Volunteers for Sustainable Development, or shortly IV 2026, creates the political momentum to act on this recognition. IV 2026 is a call to member states, to UN entities, civil society, private sector, and academia, not only to celebrate volunteerism, but to embed it more deeply in the acceleration of the 2030 Agenda. Excellencies, on behalf of United Nations volunteers and the billions of volunteers worldwide, we encourage member states to consider three interlinked strategic priorities in this regard. First, to systematically include volunteerism in SDG planning and implementation, and particularly on climate action, disaster risk reduction, and community resilience. Secondly, to make volunteer contributions visible in national planning, national budgeting, and in SDG reporting, including in the voluntary national reviews. Thirdly, to strengthen the enabling environments for volunteering through legal recognition, national volunteer frameworks, and risk protection, so that volunteering is safe, inclusive, and available for all. The International Volunteer 2026 gives us a window of opportunity to fully recognize and unleash the power of volunteerism. UNV stands ready to partner with member states, regional institutions, and the communities they serve to turn this opportunity into lasting change. Thank you.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from United Nations volunteers. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from International Organization for Migrations to be followed by APR, CEM, Youth, Children and Adolescent Constituency.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, it is an honor for the International Organization for Migration to address this forum. In Asia and the Pacific, human mobility shapes our shared future. Migration is central to the 2030 Agenda and to the pledge to leave no one behind. In 2024, more than 90 million people from our region lived outside their home countries. These migrants bring skills, ideas, and essential finance for development, and thereby strengthening economies and communities as highlighted in the Doha Political Declaration. And yet, these gains are increasingly at risk. Climate impacts, inequalities, and unsafe and irregular journeys continue to drive displacement and exploitation. Asia-Pacific remains the world's most disaster-prone region, with nearly 24 million disaster-related displacements recorded. These figures remind us of the urgency of action. Our message is clear, Excellencies. Migration brings great benefits when it is managed well with care and cooperation. Each government maintains its sovereign right to define national priorities. At the same time, those factors that shape mobility transcend borders. No country can address them alone. Regional cooperation helps us build shared systems, common standards, and practical solutions that support national plans. This approach indeed guided the Asia-Pacific Second Regional Review of the Global Compact for Migration held last year in this very ESCAP chamber, where member states asked the regional United Nations Network on Migration, including IOM, to help accelerate progress on migration-related SDGs, leading up also to the International Migration Review Forum, IMRF, this year in May in New York. Across Asia and the Pacific region, we see how cooperation works, from integrating human mobility into regional and national frameworks to expanding regular labor migration pathways, strengthening climate resilience, improving data systems, and helping communities prepare for, responding to, and recover from crisis, while governments and partners mobilize support for solutions for displacement. Let us use this forum to turn commitments into results. By working together, we can make mobility safer, widen opportunities, and ensure truly inclusive and sustainable development for all. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from International Organization for Migrations. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from APR, CEM, Youth, Children and Adolescent constituency, to be followed by distinguished delegates from UN Environment Program.
Thank you, Chair. And I'm speaking on behalf of the APR-CEM Youth, Children and Adolescents Major Group Constituency and APFST Youth Fellow. We recognize that the three core themes of social development, poverty eradication, promotion of full and productive employment and decent work for all, and social integration integral for achieving Agenda 2030. And for the full implementation of the Doha Declaration, we call for the meaningful and inclusive participation of youth in all their diversities, women, persons with disabilities, indigenous peoples, and marginalized communities in governance, agenda setting and monitoring at national, regional, and international level. In light of the goals under review, we call for climate resilient water, sanitation, and hygiene systems, transboundary water cooperation grounded in equity and accountability, a rights-based, just energy transition that accelerates decentralized renewable systems, abandon fossil fuel subsidies, and ensure affordable access for rural, off-grid, and low-income communities. We also urge public investment in climate-resilient and universally accessible infrastructure, support for community-led innovation, systems, and mandate for inclusive urban policies. Partnership must be redefined through a right-based, people-centered, and accountable approach. We call for state actors and northern donors, countries to fulfill their financial and partnership obligations. Colleagues, as we approach the 2027 SDG Summit and the UN80, this is a critical opportunity to address the weakening multilateralism and fragmented global cooperation. Human rights commitments must be strongly upheld, and regional Southern voice should meaningfully shape global outcomes. Asia and the Pacific region has the dynamism, innovation, and diversity to lead. But leadership now requires accountability to shift subsidies from fossil fuels to renewables, to close digital and gender gaps, to invest in resilient infrastructure, and to ensure that no community remains invisible in data financing or governance. The time for incremental change has passed. Coordinated, inclusive, and rights-based action is not optional. It is urgent. We stand ready to be partners in delivering not just resilience and sustainability, but also development justice. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from UN Environment Program to be followed by distinguished delegates from Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. So may I move further? Now I invite the distinguished delegates from Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations to be followed by the APR-CEM, Community Discriminated on Works and Descent constituency.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In Asia and the Pacific, agri-food systems transformation is a practical entry point for the acceleration of all Sustainable Development Goals, strengthening resilience and reducing inequalities. FAO supports member countries to move from commitments to delivery through coordinated policy support, evidence generation, partnership building, and investment facilitation. One of the priorities is accelerating the transition to sustainable, safe, resilient, and inclusive production systems across crops, livestock, fisheries, aquaculture, and forestry. This includes scaling up renewable energy in agri-food systems to expand energy access, reduce emissions, and enhance productivity. At the same time, climate policies, NDCs, and investment plans should include clear targets and actions for agri-food solutions. Water security is central to this effort, and FAO supports countries to improve water use efficiency, integrated water resource management, and policies that strengthen inclusive water governance. Equity must be designed into transformation. We need inclusive rural financial services, affordable credit, and tailored mechanisms so that smallholder farmers, MSMEs, women and youth can invest and benefit from agro-industrial value chains and decent jobs created for them. Closing infrastructure and digital divides is equally urgent. Logistics, storage, connectivity, data and digital finance services must translate into real economic opportunity. Furthermore, rapid urbanization across Asia and the Pacific requires agri-food systems to be fully integrated into urban development. FAO supports the integration of urban agri-food systems measures into national urban policies and city and territorial plans. A city-region approach strengthens linkages between urban, peri-urban, and rural areas, helping to shorten supply chains, reduce food loss and waste, improve access to safe and nutritious food. Targeted investments in sustainable water management, energy smart solutions, inclusive industrialization, greener cities and partnerships can drive integrated and lasting development outcomes. FAO stands ready to support our member countries in turning these actions into measurable results and accelerating progress towards the 2030 Agenda, ensuring that no one is left behind, and especially the ones that they are usually left behind, the poor people and the ones that they are facing hunger. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, distinguished delegates from FAO. Now I invite the distinguished delegates from APR CEM, Community Discriminated on Works and Decent Constituency, to be followed by ESCAP Sustainable Business Network.
Respected Chair, distinguished delegates, I represent the Dalits and Community Discriminated Work and Decent constituency of APR CEM. Around 220 million Dalits and CDWD lives in Asia out of 270 million people globally are subjected to discriminated based on work and descent. This population are systematically excluded from mainstream development benefits. The SDGs 2030 agenda does not explicitly recognize caste or descent as a dimension of discrimination. Dalit and CDWD in Asia face deep-rooted exclusion across multiple SDGs dimensions due to the persistent discrimination, lack of explicit recognition in SDGs framework, gaps in data and barriers to service, reinforcing intergeneration inequalities and showing progress towards SDG targets, lack of disaggregated caste descent data in national and regional SDG monitoring, impedance, identification of disparities and tracking of progress of CDWD community. Persistent discrimination, violence, and weak access to justice and access to social protection undermine peaceful, inclusive societies for these groups. As a key recommendation, SDG indicators should be revised and include specific indicator for measure to track progress in addressing caste-based discrimination and untouchability as well as its manifestations. The government should express its strong willingness and ensure adequate budgets and human resources for relevant departments and agencies to conduct periodic surveys and produce disaggregated data for SDG tracking. All high-level mechanisms created to accelerate SDG implementation should be reconstructed to ensure meaningful participation and voice of Dalit and marginalized community. The national government consider data gaps as urgency and facilitate regular coordination meetings among agencies responsible for generating disaggregated data. The government should express its strong willingness and ensure adequate budget and human resources for relevant departments and agencies to conduct periodic surveys and produce disaggregated data for SDG tracking. The government should review the progress and accelerate efforts to SDG localization and the implementation of LNOB principle at both at local and provincial levels. I thank you.
Thank you. Now, before going to video, anyone would like to intervene further? No, then
Thank you, Chair.
let's see the video.
Thank you, Chair. Is it allowed to read the statements from morning session, the organization? Because we had submitted the statement at morning, but because of the time, we didn't get the space for intervention.
Let's see the video first.
Excellency, distinguished delegates, as chair of the ESCAP Sustainable Business Network, I'm honored to deliver this statement on behalf of the private sector of Asia and the Pacific at this 13th Asia-Pacific Forum on Sustainable Development. This year's theme, Transformative, Equitable, Innovative, and Coordinated Actions for the 2030 Agenda and its SDG for a Sustainable Future for All, reflects the urgency of our moment. With only 4 years remaining until 2030, our region must accelerate delivery across the goals under review, particularly SDG 6, 7, 9, 11, and 17. Yet, progress remains uneven and financing gaps remain significant. With overseas development assistance declining and increasing pressure on public finances, the role of the private sector in charting the path towards sustainable development is greater than ever before. The private sector must therefore be viewed not only as a source of capital, but a strategic partner in implementation. However, to scale impact, we need enabling ecosystem. First, we must unlock sustainable finance at scale. This includes the de-risking mechanism, blended finance platforms, and regulatory coherence that gives long-term certainty to investors, particularly in least developed countries, landlocked developing countries, and small island developing states. Second, we must embed innovation with inclusion, digital transformation, clean technology, and resilient infrastructure must generate shared prosperity, supporting MSME, women-led enterprises, and young entrepreneurs as drivers of sustainable growth. Excellency, the questions before us is not whether transformation is necessary. It is whether we will move fast enough. The private sector stands ready to invest, to innovate, to partner, and to lead. If we align policy with capital, innovation with inclusion, and ambition with implementation, Asia-Pacific will not merely catch up to the 2030 Agenda, we will shape its success. Let us move forward with urgency and shared responsibility to deliver on the promise of the 2030 Agenda for our people, our planet, and our shared prosperity. Thank you very much.
Before I close the agenda, I would like to ask the conference officer to play a recorded video message from Vice President of the Asian Development Bank.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, and partners, today's dialogue has focused on a defining challenge of our time: how we translate commitments into action to deliver the 2030 Agenda and a sustainable future for all. Turning ambition into results requires financing at scale, strong institutions, and effective partnerships. This is where multilateral development banks like ADB have a critical role to play. Our priority is to deliver smarter, more integrated solutions, supporting countries to strengthen institutions, deepen regional cooperation, mobilize private capital, and invest in systems that are resilient, inclusive, and future-ready. Today also marks the launch of our annual Asia-Pacific SDG Partnership Report. This year's report focuses on inclusive urban futures and on what it will take to move from inequality to opportunity. With more than half of the world's urban population living in Asia, cities are central to SDG delivery. The report calls for coordinated, system-wide investments that can bridge divides, promote decent works, and build greener, more resilient cities for all. ADB is already supporting these shifts in practical ways. In Mongolia, modernizing technical and vocational education to better match industry needs is helping create pathways to formal jobs. In Tonga, ADB and partners are financing a battery energy storage system to store solar energy and ensure grid stability. These insights resonate strongly with the Doha Declaration and the outcomes of the World Summit for Social Development, which remind us that development must be inclusive by design. Let me conclude by expressing my sincere appreciation to UN, ESCAP, UNDP, member states, development partners, civil society, and the private sector for your leadership and collaboration. It is through partnerships like this that we can turn shared commitments into lasting impact. Thank you, and I look forward to our continued collaboration in advancing the 2030 Agenda.
Thank you. Now, allow me to close this meeting and invite everyone to join the cocktail receptions hosted by ADB, ESCAP, and UNDP. And thank you for all contributions and for an excellent segment. Let me now invite the Secretary to make some housekeeping announcements.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Chair. I'd just like to remind delegates that we will reconvene here at ESCAP Hall at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning to continue with Agenda Item 3. Please do not leave any belongings behind here in ESCAP Hall this evening. And it's my pleasure also to ask you to join just outside here, ESCAP Hall, the reception that is kindly hosted by ADB, ESCAP, and UNDP. Thank you very much, and back to you.
The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you. Thank you, Excellency. Very good. Thank you very much.